So I am a couple of days late to this story, but this is a pretty big piece of news. It's an interesting rumor, and it could have potentially huge implications for Nintendo and the Switch in 2019, and so I thought it would be fun to discuss it. So what we're talking about is this random conversation that's been going around the internet the past week about all of these games, these mysterious games that might still be coming to the Nintendo Switch. There is apparently a list of up to 11 games that have different varying chances or possibilities of being announced for the Switch in 2019. It's apparently 11 mysterious games, mostly first party, some exclusive, all sorts of different things happening, more Wii U ports. I mean, all of this stuff. 11 games in 2019 that we don't yet know about. And when we look at how pretty solid 2019 looks for the Nintendo Switch overall so far, that definitely becomes exciting when you start to look at all of these extra games. Not to mention, we recently had one of the biggest games that most of us were hoping to play in 2019, Metroid Prime 4, unfortunately delayed. I mean, 2019 on the Switch is already supposed to have Animal Crossing, and Pokemon, and Fire Emblem, and Daemon X Machina, and Yoshi's Crafted World, and possibly Bayonetta 3, and so many things that when we think of up to 11 mystery games still coming to the console, I mean, that's mind-blowing. We also know of a couple of huge third-party games that are coming. We know Mortal Kombat 11 was recently announced, Doom Eternal, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 being exclusive to the Switch. I mean, 2019 is prepared to be super, super stacked. And so, what's happening with these 11 games, and where is this story coming from? This is coming from someone who I'm sure a lot of you guys know, Emily Rogers, a very prolific and well-known industry insider sort of type of person who has a pretty big presence on her own blog and, of course, on Twitter. She's very famous for kind of leaking or beginning the rumors and predictions about Mario plus Rabbids, and then, of course, also Pokemon Let's Go. So there's a lot behind what she's had to say before, and now she's been the one who's been discussing, or sort of spearheading this discussion about these 11 mystery games. Now, on the website Nintendo Soup, I was able to find kind of a breakdown here of these 11 mystery games based on, like, individual slots. Obviously, they're not giving us full titles of games, you know, but it's a breakdown of these 11 titles, and they have some percentages of likelihood kind of associated with them of everything that Emily basically has said or predicted or is theorizing or leaking or whatever the case turns out to be. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of just run down this list really quick and then spend a couple of minutes just BSing with you guys about what I think could be going on and maybe some of the titles that we might see. So if we take a look at this list here, we can see a lot of stuff. So the first couple of slots are something that I guess are considered most likely. They're saying 70% chance or higher of showing up specifically in 2019. Not so much that they do or don't exist. This is just to be something that releases in 2019. So you can see the first four slots, are labeled as mystery game number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that could be who even knows what. Number 5 is a mystery eShop game. Number 6 is where things get a little bit interesting. A mystery Wii U port that apparently has some sort of traction behind the scenes that tells us it's a 2013 Wii U title. So that is definitely interesting information. Number 7 is another eShop game, number 2. I don't really understand how they decided to break this down. It's kind of ridiculous, actually, but whatever. We might as well just keep going because this is what we're doing here. And then number 8 is a new Labo kit. So I thought that it was pretty interesting to see possibly a new Labo kit thrown into this conversation because it does sort of feel like the Labo conversation and the excitement and the zeitgeist of it releasing has kind of gone away. And it's like, oh yeah, Labo. That was like a big thing that Nintendo showed everyone early in 2018 that launched in, I want to say, April. And there was a lot of press and excitement around it. And apparently it's a pretty good product for the demographic that it's geared towards. But then we kind of haven't really heard much about it. And I think it would be interesting, even though I'm not into Labo, it would be interesting if Nintendo actually did have some more stuff released for it. Like, let's see them continue to support the Labo. And then you can see the last couple of games here. This is where things get really interesting. And it's also where they change from a most likely status to what they're calling a maybe status for 2019. So the wildcard titles. These, I guess, have 50% chance or less of showing up or being revealed or confirmed in 2019. So again, take this all for what you will, but they list number 9, Retro Studios' secret game. This is assuming that it wasn't canned, is what they say. Number 10 being the Metroid Prime trilogy, assuming a lot of other information from potential leakers and people online and on Twitter is correct. And then 11 would be another mystery Wii U port Wii U port number 2. And so this is what we have to work with, and at the end of the day, this might be kind of silly because if you think about it, we're looking at a list mostly comprised of nothing and mostly comprised out of rumors. Again, coming from a fairly reliable source. So that part is what makes it interesting enough that I wanted to talk about it, because I think a lot of us trust Emily. She's been fantastically correct in the past, so that does make this a little bit more exciting and add some credence to it. But we're looking at a list with a bunch of mystery games. I mean, it's kind of stupid in a way, but like I said, we're already here doing this, so I'm just going to keep talking about it with you guys. I think most of you find this entertaining. So I'm going to address the first thing here that I want to as far as this whole list is concerned. All the stuff listed as mystery game, just throw it out. Don't care about it. That could be anything. That could be the dumbest, weird little, you know, I don't know, Barbie Bratz racer game meant for some sort of person and demographic that would not be interesting to any of us, to something truly spectacular and surprising, you know, like F-Zero's coming back, Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming to the Switch. I mean, it could be 100 different things, but they're listed as mystery game number 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, come on. Who even cares? That's a bunch of whatever, so we're not even going to talk about those. Now, this also applies to the eShop games. There's 2 eShop games listed here at spots number 5 and 7. That's essentially the same thing as the mystery game to me. It's just either mystery physical game or mystery eShop game. They don't mean anything, so we're not going to pay attention to those. Let's go to the first stuff that I find the most exciting, and it's the Wii U ports. There's a Wii U port, apparently, that we know is a 2013 title, and then some other mysterious Wii U port. This is interesting to me because, you know, a lot of us maybe early on in the Switch's life wanted to believe that only a very small select handful of Wii U titles would be brought over to the Switch, and that it would probably mostly be in that first launch year, and then probably stop so that Nintendo could make way for mostly new games in a lot of these franchises. That's turned out not to be the case. We've seen a lot of Wii U ports and many more in 2018. And so this list, being comprised of 2 mystery Wii U ports, seems to potentially have some traction, or at least some validity. Like, I would certainly be willing to believe that another Wii U port or 2 or 3 might still be coming in 2019 or 2020 or whatever. And I haven't really talked about this topic in a long time. Overall, I'm fine with it. There's a very heated debate going on around the idea of Wii U ports on the Switch, and it is an interesting topic. It's a sensitive topic for a lot of people, and I do have thoughts on both sides of it, but I think my most basic opinion is that it's fine. We've seen enough great games on the Switch that I'm not too worried about a couple of Wii U ports, and there are even some games from the Wii U I would still like to see ported over to the Switch, and that I might even double dip on. So as far as the 2013 title, I think that there's 3 possibilities that it could be, and I think there's 2 of them that have the highest chance of being accurate. The least likely is the one I probably want the most, and it's the Wonderful 101. I do think that game might eventually come, and a lot of people want it and talk about it. I would love it. It's one of my favorite games of the last generation, but I feel like it's the least likely of the 3 2013 titles that would get a port to the Switch. The 2 more likely ones are Super Mario 3D World and Pikmin 3. And I would be over the moon if any 3 of those games came. I thought Pikmin 3, that's one of my favorite Nintendo games I've ever played, you guys. It's probably the one I want the most out of these 3. The Wonderful 101, I think, deserves more attention drawn to it, so I guess in that respect, I would like it to be Wonderful 101, but I liked Pikmin 3 just a little bit better than Wonderful 101. But Mario's 3D World might be the best business decision for Nintendo. So you have the game that needs the most credit and recognition, Wonderful 101, the game that's kind of middle of the road, and my personal favorite, Pikmin 3, and then the one that makes the most business sense, Super Mario 3D World. So who knows what it could be, if anything, but I feel like it's got to be one of those 3. As far as the other one, I mean, then we start to get into a whole different new territory, and the only 2 main games I can think of that have a good chance at showing up that isn't 2013 would be Xenoblade Chronicles X and Super Mario Maker. Those are games that a lot of people have asked for, would like to see come to the Switch, and I think that they have a pretty good shot at coming to the Switch. I think they would have a great audience on the Switch for various reasons, and so if I was going to guess, that's what I think those 2 Wii U games would be. Again, with the Labo kit, I've already talked about that. I don't really care about Labo. It's not for me, but I do think it's a shame that we haven't seen Nintendo support it more. So yeah, I would maybe like to see more support from Nintendo for the Labo. I think that would be really interesting, and I'd like to see what else they can do, and you know, maybe they add something that makes it like a Metroid thing, which would just be cool, since we're not getting a Metroid game, you know, anytime soon. So whatever it is, I just think it would be neat to see them actually continue to support it into 2019. The last 2 ones are the big daddies. the retro game, the Retro Studios secret game, you know, assuming it wasn't scrapped because of what happened with them moving on to Metroid Prime 4 and that whole mess. So I'm somebody who believes that Retro was making a game that will still release. Whether it's that the whole team at Retro was working on this game and they were almost at the end, and only at the end are they able to move over to Metroid Prime 4 because the game is almost complete, or whether it's that Retro is a two-team studio and so one game can remain on this title to complete it while the other team moves over to Metroid Prime 4. Whatever the case, I think they were working on something else that isn't Metroid Prime 4, and I think that this game will be completed and will eventually release. So I like seeing this listed here because I feel like 2019 would be the year that we would see what this game was. I'm also somebody who thinks that there's a good shot that it was this Star Fox Grand Prix racing game. I actually very much believe in the idea of that. I said this before. I heard about that, you know, over a week before that even became news and that whole story broke. So, you know, I don't know that it's true, and it very much could be fake, but I tend to believe it. It seems and feels kind of real to me. And I'm also somebody who even wants to see that game. I think that the game sounds potentially very awesome, especially with Retro behind it. And so when we look at the idea of Retro's game releasing or being confirmed in 2019, I really want to believe this one. I think that even though they moved to Metroid Prime 4, I think that their game is still going to be completed, whether it's Star Fox or something else, a new IP, another old Nintendo franchise. I think it's going to be completed and released, and so hopefully we find out about that in 2019. Which brings us to the last one, and for the millionth time, I get to bring up the Metroid Prime trilogy. It seems like I can't get away from Metroid talk and Prime 4 and Prime Trilogy talk, but I mean, hey, I certainly don't mind. I love talking about this stuff. And you know, I'm so back and forth on this Metroid Prime Trilogy thing at this point, you guys, because I believed it for so long, and I guess I do still believe it. The only thing is, with the cancellation of Prime 4 and with Retro moving around, I'm just not sure what's really happening with the Prime Trilogy at this point. I mean, there's enough reason to believe that this thing does exist. I've believed in it for a year and a half. I started hearing behind-the-scenes info a couple of months ago. Everyone was talking about it before the Game Awards. So, I mean, yeah, they have to be making this thing. It just makes so much sense. And there's even a good possibility that maybe Retro was working on the Prime Trilogy, although I want to believe that maybe Tantalus would be like a port studio that Nintendo would have had working on it. So either way, you know, is it time to get the Prime Trilogy in 2019? And I'm overall still going to say yes. I discussed this in my video following the Metroid Prime 4 delay when we think about where Metroid goes now with the delay between now and the release of Metroid Prime 4. Obviously, releasing the Prime Trilogy is a hugely important thing Nintendo could do for the community, for the fans, for fans of Metroid, to say, hey, I know it stinks that we had to delay Prime 4. You guys were already probably chomping at the bit to play it this year. Now you got to wait another 3 or 4 years. Here is the Prime Trilogy. Hopefully, with an HD remaster and maybe some new bells and whistles thrown in. I would prefer something fancy and better looking than just a straight SD port, although that would certainly be better than nothing. The only thing is I already have that. I mean, I have 2 copies of all 3 of those Metroid Prime games. I have the trilogy. So I would like it to have something a little bit more. And so, yeah, when we consider Prime Trilogy, I mean, you know, she talks about if Homeboy from Game Informer's info is correct, that it's been done for a while and Nintendo's just waiting to confirm it. I want to believe that the next Nintendo Direct we get, maybe in February or next month in March, is probably going to be when Nintendo's going to show or confirm that the Prime Trilogy exists, and I would think we would see it in 2019, which means we could add that to this ever-growing list of games for this year. So, at the end of the day, that's it. A very interesting story, a very interesting list of games. Like I said, half the list is kind of dumb, because it's just mystery game, mystery eShop, mystery release, which doesn't mean anything, like I said. But everything else is certainly curious, and the Wii U port stuff I think is interesting. Whatever's happening with Prime Trilogy or Retro Studios, who even knows? I think it's all fascinating. Again, the source of this list is somebody who's been very right in the past, and I think it makes this more exciting to talk about. It could all mean nothing, man. It really just could mean a bunch of nothing, and we already have a bunch of great games we know we're going to play in 2019 on the Switch. And it's like, hey, new games get announced for all consoles every year anyway. So it's like, what does a list predicting mystery games even really mean? To me, it's the more specific stuff that becomes the most exciting, and that's why I wanted to talk with you guys about it today. So, That's what I feel. That's kind of a breakdown of this list. Tell me what you guys think. Do you believe this list? Do you not? Are you excited for what's here? Do you think some of it's true and some of it isn't? What would you like to see for all of these mystery game slots? You know, it's an exciting time here at the beginning of 2019. So with that being said, tell me what you think. Share your thoughts below. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R, and I'll catch you next time on another video.